Hi, and welcome back to SEO On-Air. I'm your host Aaron, and today we talk to Shailesh Ghimire, the VP of Client Strategy at New Wine Digital. We talk about local SEO strategies, how to respond to negative reviews, and how AI is taking over the marketing world. I hope you enjoy this video.
The conference that you mentioned in September, was that the local SEO strategies? Was that the same talk that you had given, or am I mixing two of them?
No, that one was a 3 hour presentation I did two of those. It was not. It was on clicks to
Right,
patients.
right, right. Um, so
Yeah.
one thing we can do while talking about these different topics is we can use one type of business, let's say, as an example throughout. So whenever we do, let's say, go to another topic, and if we want to use an example, we can just refer back to that same type of business so that we can just keep it uniform throughout.
Okay.
I think dental and veterinary would probably be the best top two.
I think so. I think dental and veterinary would be good, but yeah, I think that would work too. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
we
would
could
work. Yeah.
probably pick one of them and then just from there run with it all the time for all questions. So I think the first question would probably
Okay.
be how do we convert I mean, clicks into patients from a SEO marketing perspective?
Well, first of all, there's a couple of things there. In a lot of my talks, I have to take a step back and realize that the patient, the practitioner, like the veterinary practitioner themselves, they go to veterinary school, they come out, they work typically for a veterinary practice, and then they decide, oh, I'm going to open my own practice, right? So a lot of times they don't have the business training because when you go into business, you're basically a business, right? You love veterinary, you love working on animals, that's your passion, but then there's the side of it of running it as a business. You have to staff, you have to get new patients, you have to do all that. And a lot of times in my conversations I realize the gap that they have, which is they don't really know where to get started, how to get started. Stuff that maybe we have worked in marketing for all these years we take for granted. So in my presentations, I usually start with a foundational 1 hour of foundational
Right.
training in terms of basic marketing principles like unique value proposition. What is it that how do you arrive at that? Why do people come to your practice? What is the problem you're solving? And then also look at the foundations of marketing and explain to them the journey that a patient goes through, right? So you come home from work. I give some examples. You come home from work, your dog is limping, right? You don't know what's going on. Did they, so then you go to Google a lot of times to search those symptoms, right? So now you're in the exploration phase. And then you travel through a journey. And so what I point out is the different channels that you as a business have in reaching those people in those different channels. So if they're just in the early exploration phase, having a really strong blog article on your veterinary practice talking about things that your patients are asking, that builds trust. That's in the exploration stage, right? And then you have to make them easy to see you. Then they might go look at your reviews. Then they might go and maybe check out your Facebook page just to see. And then they'll go to Google Maps. How far are you? Are you 20 miles away? Are you 5 miles away? Are you 3 miles away, right? So your presence has to answer their questions in all of those phases. And then the big one is when they call you, right? So sometimes marketing people leave the ball at that stage and say it's your problem, but you need to also talk to them about that as well, saying your receptionist needs to answer the questions properly, have the resources available, all that kind of stuff. And then they make the appointment. And then they come, they have a good experience. Then you have to get them to write a
Yeah.
review, right? Make sure that they give you a review. And then the other thing is make sure that they sign up for your newsletter because you want them to be getting email newsletters on a regular basis, right? So I explain all of that in the first part, and then in the second part we get more into the nitty gritty of what is SEO, what is PPC, what is all of these different channels, and how do you use that for your business so that you can convert those patients in those clicks into
So
patients.
the initial, let's say, foundation stage, how long does it normally take for you to explain that? Because I'm trying to see if I can get like maybe a summarized 5-minute version of it.
It usually takes me. I have a 40-minute PowerPoint presentation, because I usually break it up into 40, 45 minutes, leave 5 minutes for question and answer, 10 minutes for bathroom,
Right,
come
right.
back. So usually I start with, how to prioritize your marketing budget as well. So I talk a little bit about, what, using the house as an example. So what is the foundation of your marketing? Usually when it comes to digital marketing, the foundation of your marketing is your
Yeah.
website. And then in addition to that, you have SEO, and then you have, your email marketing and the content that you create, because those are things that are foundational. You control that. And then you also can spend however much you want. You can spend $10,000 on your website, or you can spend $500 on your website. You can write 5 blog posts. It's all on you, right? You're not putting out hard money to get your clients. Above that, the stuff, the beams, and maybe some of the flooring and things like that in a house is like PPC and paid media. So you have to pay to get the traffic, right? So that's more like, once you've got the foundation right, you can go on to that, because if your website and landing pages are not good, driving traffic to it
It's not
is
going to
not going
work,
to do you
right?
very much, right? So, and you also want to have some trust building articles. You want to have people sign up for something. You need all of that stuff in place. You can't just run a campaign and then expect things to happen. So I put that as the second part, and then the top part, the roof of the house, or the decorative elements of the house, is social media and PR, and maybe some of the things that you do there, where it's nice to get people there, but it's not. I mean, if you take the example of veterinary clinics or dentists, a lot of times when I talk to them, they never tell me that people came off of social media campaigns. They'll come off of PPC or SEO, but social media is more like share. Oh, that's cute. It's more of
Awareness,
a
right?
presence. You're trying to win their brain space. Think about your person. They have a certain brain space. Try to win that brain space. So that's kind of the topic. So in my 40 minutes, I talk about that. I talk about the budget,
Right.
because people get really excited about budget. Like, we can talk about all these
How
things,
much is
but
it?
how much
Yeah,
is it going to
yeah.
cost me? And how much can I expect out of it, right? So you spend, $1,000 on PPC. What can you expect? So I give them some of those things just as a foundation, so everybody really understands how it
So,
works.
in maybe that brief explanation that you just gave, we built a house, right? Where we have the foundation, the beams,
Yeah.
and we have a bit of the decoration slash roof. But let's say about 20 years ago, it would have mainly just been a little bit of foundation, and then the rest of it would have been maybe, I think back in the day, yellow pages would have been the most for people to find you. So my question
Yeah.
comes is, being in the industry for so long, how have you seen how the changes been so far, and how have you been managed to weather through all of it?
Well, I mean, beginning like 20 years ago, a lot of people said, well, we don't need a website. It was seen as a decorative
Yeah,
element, right? It was seen as a nice to have, or we're a veterinary clinic. Why do we need a website? That was 20, 25 years ago. And then slowly, as people evolved, it kind of moves, right? It became more of a, well, no, it's good to, do it. And then it became, well, if you don't
you're not
have
gonna
it,
make it.
how, how are you going to be in
Yeah, yeah.
business, right? So it moved from being a decorative element to a foundational element. And I think the same thing with SEO, which is, I honestly don't know how you can be found if you're not on search engines. Like, how do people find you? There's no yellow pages anymore. My kids don't know what
Yeah.
we used to get the yellow pages every year. We don't get those, right? How would you find a business nowadays if you did not go to Google? I don't
Like there are
know.
small chances that you can find them through social media, but unless you've again done the groundwork for it, you're not really gonna believe that page. You'll see it and probably move away from it.
Right? You're not. You're not. Yeah, yeah. So I think those things are very foundational. I think it's how, but there's also the question of, I do notice that, because I work in an industry or with clients that are very subject to demand and supply. There are instances where I have come across many, veterinary practices, maybe in rural areas where their location, they're the only one there, or maybe they're a dentist in a particular venue, and they've been there for 35 years. So everybody knows that that's the dentist, right? There are cases like that. In fact, I did meet a gentleman, a veterinary doctor in Texas recently, who I asked him how he gets patients, and he says, "Oh, I've never had to worry about that." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, I'm the only vet practice in a 35-mile radius, and I've been there for
Fair
40
enough.
years. So where are they going to go?" So, he said he's never paid any money for marketing. Now, those are
Right,
isolated
right.
cases, right? Those are isolated outliers. I don't think you can do that anymore, especially if you're living in any kind of urban setting where there's 50, 60 veterinary practices in a 40-mile radius. It's very challenging for you to do that.
But let's this house now that we've built, and understanding that if there are other competitive houses nearby, one thing that can increase trust that we all know is like reviews, especially if it's again stuff which is relating to veterinary dentistry. You do need customer reviews to actually build that trust to want to visit them. So, if
Yes.
we've built up the foundation of this house for a dental practice, let's say, how do we ensure that the reviews that are coming in either remain positive or we respond properly to the negative at least? It's kind of like a long question, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, I mean, on that one too, I think a lot of businesses have heard the message from marketers to get reviews. So a lot of times you go do a search on Google, you look at a veterinary practice, you'll see 45, 35
Right.
reviews, right? So I think a lot of companies have gotten good at getting reviews. I think the foundational remains like be deliberate about it. People don't just go out of their way to write unless it's a negative experience. Then
Yeah.
they'll go
Yeah.
write. But a lot of times when we have a positive experience, it's just human nature. If we have a positive experience, we don't think about it. So we don't really go and write. So you have to prod them and encourage them. So I always tell these clinics, make it easy to get your reviews, right? Where do you go get it? Maybe you have a QR code at the exit. Maybe you have something in your receipt. Maybe you have something in your email. Maybe you have something on your website. Make it easy for them to just scan the code because most of these reviews are being written on phones. I don't think anybody's sitting down at a
Yeah.
desktop to write these. So make it easy to get there. I tell people to focus on Google. I understand Yelp and there's other places where people can write reviews, but all the data I've seen, most people read Google reviews more than Yelp reviews, more than Facebook reviews, more than any other niche site that people get
Right.
reviews on. So focus on Google. And then something that I've been starting to tell people more, because you talked about how do you stand out, is when you encourage people to write when the veterinary dentist is in conversation with the patient themselves, make it a point to say, hey, would you mind sharing this experience with people, because it's an act of service to an
Yeah.
extent. You're basically saying, hey, you know this guy did a good job, because there's a lot of people out there. So share your positive story and provide some details. Provide a little bit of details of this is what they did for my pet, and this is what the outcome was, and this is why I enjoyed it. It doesn't have to be very long. And the reason why I say that, give that recommendation, is because the quality of the reviews is becoming more important than just the review
Yeah.
itself, right? I mean, people just a 5-star review, a 5-star click. What does that mean? 5-star. Who gave that? What did they say? But if there's a little bit of description and not
Good
just
job or something.
the doctor was on time, the staff was friendly. Okay, that doesn't say anything. But if the person says, the doctor did insulin shots on my cat, and the insulin treatment really helped my cat that has been suffering from this for the last 9 months, I would highly recommend Doctor So and So. Now here's the thing: insulin shot became a keyword. Cat became a keyword, right? All of a sudden, Google's indexing is now indexing your website and your terms that you're aiming for. So I think you have to educate people to do that. You're not going to get that all the time, but I think that's how
I
you
I
have to
was
do
gonna
it.
actually ask,
The other
like,
thing that I also say is,
asking for feedback,
sorry.
while it is always welcomed, there are many, let's say, management level people who don't feel comfortable asking their clients or customers for feedback. So, is there maybe, like you said, make it
Yeah,
easy with the QR code? Are there maybe other ways to also make it easy to at least ask a client without making them feel uncomfortable?
I think this is where you have to use your whole team in your office, because there's always, in a 9 or 10, a lot of vet clinics have maybe 8 to 15 people in their office. there's always one or two people that are always super
Right.
extroverted, right? Just the numbers. Maybe they should do it. I know it's maybe that lady is a front desk lady. Maybe that's the hygienist or whoever it is in that office, right? Have them do it, because there are certain personality types these things come naturally to. Maybe the doctor is not the one to do it. Maybe it is, but maybe it's not. So I think that's where the team effort comes in, is saying, hey, who on the team feels comfortable as you're walking the patient out to say, hey, leave a review, and then maybe you organize a process to do that. So I think there's creative ways to address that
Okay.
issue.
Because again, I feel like personally taking that example, there was a dentist who had approached me. I mean, I had approached him itself to get my teeth cleaned up. And after the end of the whole session, I felt really good. It was a well done cleaning. I didn't really expect it also because he was a new dentist. At the end of it, he just very nicely and calmly asked, "Hey, can you just drop a review on Google? And like, here's a link as well to do it." And I was like, oh, that's such a really nice and touching thing to do. I should probably do that. And it just completely slipped my mind after that. And I just never ended up doing it. I feel like that's one approach
Yeah.
to take, but I don't really know how often there are going to be people like me who just look past that. Is there a way to counter it?
Well, that's where I think that's where the texting, I know there's a lot of tools out there, review tools, where you can basically, maybe the doctor makes a note saying this person agreed. And then when that paperwork goes to the receptionist, you enter it into your tool to send out a reminder for it by text or by
Right.
email. So I think that's probably the way to address that. And there are tools available that do that. They send out the text, they send out the emails with the request for review and things like that. So it needs to be integrated into your process. I think the doctor asking was great, but the process also needs to
Yeah.
be there that supports it.
Just to maybe quickly round that up, how important would you rate just reviews in general for your website?
Oh, I would review. I'm going to rate it as very
Okay.
high, because for a number of reasons. One is, um, I know Google is on record saying that its algorithm factors in reviews, right? We don't know how highly they factor it in, but all I know is in the offices that we've worked, as the reviews have gone up, the rankings have gone up and the traffic has gone up. So I can't say I have hard data to support that, but there is some kind of
Yeah.
correlation there. That's the first thing. And the second thing is, I recently saw a number that said that 88%, I forget the source, but 88% of consumers will read reviews before they engage with your
Yeah.
office. So, and I also believe that people will read negative reviews
First, I think.
to get an idea to why I read
Yeah.
negative reviews. I read 4 or 5 positive reviews, and I read 2 or 3 negative reviews, because I feel like that gives me a well-rounded view of
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
business, right? And a lot of times, maybe I'm in the industry, and so I don't panic when I read negative reviews. But when I read negative reviews, I'm looking for, was the issue with the business or the person?
Right. Right.
You know, because a lot of times it's somewhere in between. It's not always the business, right? Unless the business is horrible. Which, if they have 35 positive reviews, they're probably not horrible, right? So that's why I tell my clients that when they respond, that they should respond to reviews. They shouldn't be negative in reviews. And when they respond to negative reviews, they should take it in stride, try to make the problem right, do everything in good faith to correct the issue, right? And if you do that, a random person reading that review is going to see that as well. They're gonna see that effort, and they're not going to ding that against you. Now, if you have 15 positive and 15 negative reviews, that's a
Yeah.
different story. But if you have, 80% 4-star and above, and just 10% below 3-star, in those situations, I think you can take those with
Yeah.
people are
That's a
reasonable,
more
right?
healthy ratio. One thing that I
Yeah.
did read while coming up with these questions was there was a section that mentioned how to stop negative reviews before they happen. Do you have any tips for that, though?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I think sometimes people. So sometimes what I've recommended to people is businesses is, just have a feedback page on your website where they can send feedback, and maybe give people the option of writing something there And then if they give you positive feedback, asking them to share on Google. But if they give the negative feedback there, then uh, then um, then addressing them and not even going to Google, right? Not making it
Yeah.
public. So being creative. I know there are software packages. Some of the software systems I've looked at, they get very creative. They basically, you enter your review there, and then you give a rating. And then if your rating is 4 and below, that review automatically doesn't get posted on Google and Yelp or wherever. So there are software systems that do that. So they're trying to prevent the negative from going out. They're not saying don't give negative reviews. They're just saying let's address this before it gets public.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the creative approaches that I give. But again, most companies should aim for 80% over 4 star, and then there's always going to be 15, because you can't make everybody happy,
Right.
right? There's always going to be 1 or 2 people that are not going to be happy with your service for one reason or
Yeah.
another.
And like you mentioned, taking a more creative route would be a good way to kind of deal with negative reviews. I think also like responding
Yeah.
to it at least will show that you do care about the person who did send the review. But what are some of the other ways that you could probably healthily deal with a negative review online?
Online, first of all, we have been in situations because our offices are mostly, the clients I work with are mostly medical, considered medical. We have seen negative reviews that are not true or
Right.
factual. And so because we have records because we have anybody that comes to the office, you have to sign in, right? It's not like you went to Target and bought shoes, right? We don't have a real way of tracking that. But we could show Google, if Google asked, yeah, this person came in and this is the treatments that we did, right? And this is the result of it. We have documentation. There have been instances where their reviews have been negative, and they've also been factually incorrect. And fortunately, there is an appeal process in Google. It's not they won't remove negative reviews. But in my experience, I have been able to remove negative reviews that are uh, factually incorrect, because that could also be misinformation for people reading it as well. So when you go to appeal a review with Google, there are criteria you have to
Right.
meet. And if you select the right criteria and provide the supporting documentation, they can look at it as well. So that's the extreme case. We've been able to do that only a couple of times, but
How
it has happened.
often has this happened in the industry, at least for medical, at least?
I would say a lot of times, if the outcome is not exactly what maybe the patient is expecting, maybe they figured that the antibiotic that was prescribed, or the medication that was prescribed, resulted in something that, hey, those medications have, they have their limits, right? They may or may not work. And so a lot of times patients might go and research Google and say this should not have been prescribed and things like that. It doesn't happen often, but I would say I've only seen it happen maybe 3 or 4 times over the last 10 years,
Right. So
7
it's not
years.
that, let's say, rampant, but I think it could be at some point.
No, it's not rampant. Yeah, it could be at some point. But that advice is mostly for medical. If you're a non-medical business, it's hard to get your reviews
Okay.
removed, because it becomes he said, she said, and Google does not want to get into it. And their standard response is just resolve it with the client and be done
Yeah, I
with
think
it
as mentioned itself, it was mainly just reply, acknowledge, thank them, and like try to resolve the issue as quick as possible.
as quickly as possible.
So
Yeah.
we kind of understood now that the house that we built has some reviews, and we know that Google is appreciating the reviews for this house now. Where does brand mentions fit into this? And can that also boost your visibility?
Brand mentions, meaning like in third-party sites or
Yeah, yeah.
third-party areas. Yeah, that's a big part of SEO, right? Not only a brand mention, but a
I was
backlink
going
to
to
your
mention that
site.
as well.
Uh, yeah, yeah. It's kind of just mentioning a brand is good, but I think a link is 100
Yeah,
times better. But brand mentions is important as well, because that authority, domain authority, being mentioned in a positive light, I know that not for dentistry, but for some other clients we've worked at, link building is tremendously hard, as you could appreciate. But I think that there are valuable, because a lot of the people that we work with are very, very well known are very good in their fields, right? They're practicing and they are doing something that is just very, very valuable in society. And so we have been able to approach different, like university departments that may be interested in articles on practical
Right.
cases that are being looked at, done. So we've been able to, so we've worked with, we have researched them, found departments that are interested in maybe referencing their examples, referencing their cases, referencing things that they've done. And in one case, this is an estate planning situation. Um, they actually wanted the attorneys to write some papers for them that they could put on their website. And so, and then of course we ask for backlinks and things like that. It's all above board. We're not trying to do any, we're trying to add value, right? We're adding value to the university, a research center that's doing work. We're adding value to the client, and then we're trying to get links to validate and view, and we pass links both
Right.
ways, right? So some of those efforts have been very, very valuable.
Kind of trying to dial back a bit on this. For this topic mainly, was there any graph or statistics you wanted to show, or was that mainly for the clicks part of it, turning patients into clicks?
No, that was actually for the click part. This one is, let me show you the overall, when you follow, one of the things that I like, the foundation we talked about, when you practice, when you build it up correctly, and then you move into SEO and you move into your organic strategy, your review strategy, and you implement it the way that we have recommended to our clients. And we've worked with our clients for many, many years together. So I wanted to show you one graph of what you can expect if you follow this really well. So this client has been with us for 5 years, but I'm only showing data over the last year. It's a daily data screenshot of, if you compare the last 6 months. So I just ran it this morning for the 23rd. You compare just the general traffic for this in the last 6 months compared to the previous 6 months. So the first half of 22 versus the second half
Right,
of
right.
22, you're looking at a 40% increase in traffic, right? And we've been able to do this for these kinds of clients year in and year out. Not only that, but when you compare what kind of traffic are we talking about? We're talking about organic traffic. We're looking at a 62% increase, first half from first half to the second half of the year, right?
Right.
And and so this is all based on, again, the foundation being correct, the house being built correctly, your priorities are right, and then your budgeting is at the right levels. And then you're focusing on a lot of these tactics of review acquisition, content publication, some of these outreaches to build your brand and domain authority and things like that. So if you do that in a holistic manner, then you can expect those numbers are really good. Obviously, I picked out clients that we're very super
Yeah.
successful with, but I would say most of our clients experience that kind of success if they follow everything we're saying.
I was going to ask, so how long does it take for that kind of strategy to be implemented?
It takes time. The example that I give, Aaron, is I say it's like joining the
Right,
gym,
right.
right? So if you are overweight on December and then you have a New Year resolution that you want to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger by June, it's not going
Yeah.
to happen, right? Maybe it'll happen the following June, but starting January 1st, you have to go to the gym and you have to exercise, you have to eat well. So that's the way I explain it to my clients, because a lot of clients will see something like this and say, "Oh, I want that." But do you have the discipline? Because we give you a 3 month content calendar, right? We're not just going to write and post for you. We need you to review it, edit it. It has to be accurate, it has to be correct, it has to reflect your values. So we need your feedback on this thing, right? And then the keywords we're optimizing for, we need you to give us feedback, because you know your business, you know your patients, you know your clients. And so there's a lot of upfront work, but the first 3 to 4 months is very much engagement
Yeah.
at that level. But then after that, once we get into a rhythm of what we're doing, we still want them to be a part of the work, but they don't need, we do most of the heavy lifting. And so It takes this client, it took about, I would say 18 months to get to that cruising altitude. I call that cruising altitude. It's like an airplane going there. Now you're at cruising
Right.
altitude, right? We know the topics, we know the keywords, we know the links, we know what we're doing. We're just going to keep ramping this thing up.
How easy or difficult is it to convince clients to have a project that goes on for that long? Because I think most people are very, I want results right now. To go for like 18 months.
On the SEO side, I mean, it takes time. I would say a lot of our clients that have stuck with us, it took some convincing, but a lot of them we also started with
Right.
PPC. We said, hey, if you want that immediate result, carve out a budget. Let's do PPC and get you those phone calls and get you that going first, right? Like even this client that I showed you the data for, we've done PPC for them on and off. In fact, some of those peaks that you saw, it's probably PPC or an email marketing where we did
Right.
a push, right? So we do recommend that strategy for maybe the first 4 or 6 months if you're really wanting that immediate results. But we also say you have to focus on this because this is much stronger long term than having to spend, $2,000, $3,000 a month just to get the traffic that
Yeah,
you
and I
need.
also believe that once they saw the results with the PPC, they were more likely to take on the long game and be like, yeah, I think we understand, we know what you're doing. So it was, I think, easier after that to
Yeah,
build that trust.
yeah. And the other thing is, Google core updates happen, and I did a presentation at the American Marketing Association last year on this. Is when the Google core update happened last year, believe it or not, it affected a lot of medical related healthcare companies.
Yeah.
And so a lot of our veterinary clinics saw a drop in traffic, because I think they were fighting misinformation and things like that. And so we saw traffic, but the thing is that we don't practice black hat SEO. So even though July and August we saw a dip, starting September we started to see a ramp up again.
Was any kind
So
of reasoning behind this, or what was the explanation behind it?
Google, I have to think about that one. That was last August. It's not too long ago. Um, I know what it was. A lot of it was they were trying to clean up the number of, like, some people were doing so much aggressive SEO that when you did a search, you were on organic and maps and then the snippets and everything. You were on all of them, right? So they were trying to balance that out a little bit more.
Okay.
And so there was more choice available. Otherwise, the answers from the same site, the organic linking is also the same site, the map listing is also the same site, right? There's no choice. So that was one of the reasonings. I think it was the last core update. Maybe it was the one before that. But that was a big one that took a hit because we've been doing SEO so well for our clients that they were visible in all of
Right.
those. you know, so it kind of hit us on that. But then it just kind of stabilized over time. So it wasn't like anything bad or anything. But there was also a push on medical accuracy as well. I forget what terminology they were using, but they were looking at some of the medical terms and things like that a little bit closer.
In
So
relation to that, are there any kind of, let's say, definitive or somewhat definitive ranking factors that Google looks for that can maybe, if you knew what they were, you would be more able to take care of any problems that, let's say, showed up in those areas? I think it's kind of like a very long question again,
that's a very difficult question. Not only is it a long question, but it's also a
because there is
difficult
no,
question because we don't have
yeah.
access. We don't know, right? We're making inferences based on. It's like where we have our eyes closed and we're feeling the elephant and we're trying to
We
figure out if it's the
think
nose
this,
or if it's
yeah,
the tail.
yeah. So, but again, so maybe let's say, what do
Yeah.
you feel would be the most important ranking elements or factors?
I think content quality is the number one factor. I think content quality, your quality, the content just has to be high
Right.
quality. I think many years ago I watched a video when Matt Cutts was the head of SEO at Google, and he had the whole thing about write for the person, don't write for the
Right, right.
algorithm. And so people will, a lot of times SEO people will write for the algorithm. And you've read those articles. Sometimes I'll do a search on something and I'll read that article and they're repeating the same term 5 times. I'm like, come on, this is I can see
Yeah.
through it, right? And so you write for the individual, but you keep an eye on the algorithm. And then I think you had asked me in our previous call about how does Chat GPT and all that AI
Yeah.
tools affect it. And I think that's where it's going to get really tricky because I know a lot of people. I have had clients do this. are using AI tools now to write
Okay.
copy and put that on their blog posts and things like that. But I'm not sure how Google is going to figure that one out. But a lot of times you should read that copy, make sure that a non-user, somebody that didn't write it, reads it and feels good with it. Because if it's just overloaded and over optimized, it's not going to be very good, right? So content quality, in my opinion, is just very, very
I
important.
was going to ask because you mentioned content quality itself that ChatGPT has been giving out some at least decent quality content in general. So do you feel that with a few
Yeah.
more tweaks here and there, or maybe a bit of input from the user's end, then we can probably get high quality content from ChatGPT alone? Again, maybe with a few revisions from like a quality specialist, probably.
Yeah, I think so. I think those tools, I think a lot of digital agencies are going to face challenges this year with copy and content generation because of these tools. Dolly is another one that I've been playing with. It's with OpenAI as
Right.
well. And they produce some pretty reasonable copy. So I think copywriters, copywriting, producing content. I did read somewhere that these AI tools may put some kind of watermark to indicate that this is, have you heard that? I mean, to indicate that this is generated by AI.
So I think maybe with the premium version, they probably
Okay.
would say the free version has a watermark, the premium will remove that watermark. Maybe I'm not too sure.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe there'll be some kind of a code or something at the end. I know some of the logos and images that I've looked at, they do put, it's easier on graphics than text, but they do put some of these colored codes in the bottom right hand corner to kind of indicate that it
Right.
is. Obviously, you could always crop that out,
There are also,
but
I
it's
think,
there,
some
right?
AI detection tools nowadays because, once the fire came out, there had to be someone putting out the water as well. So I think quite a few
Yeah.
AI tools to just detect if content was done by AI have also just raged the market so far.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. So I think quality content generation is always going to be a challenge, and I think Google is always going to prioritize that. Relevant content, right? Good quality content means it is relevant to your audience, it is topically focused, it has the right keywords in there, and it adds value to the person that gets it. So that's kind of the definition of quality content. And so yeah, I think that's the single most important factor, I think, in their
But whether
rankings.
or not that quality content is written by an AI or a human might not make much difference.
Right,
Because if you, let's say, hit
right.
all the marks, but it's still done through AI, will Google notice it as much?
I don't know. I don't know how smart their algorithm is going to be. But I mean, one thing that is becoming apparent is if ChatGPT can answer questions for you, then do you need Google? You
Good
know,
point, yes.
so for instance, if I can go to ChatGPT and say, "Hey, who are the five best, veterinary dentists in my area or whatever," and it gives you the answer. Do I need to go to
Right.
Google? I don't know where they're getting the answer, but do I need to go to Google?
Uh,
Question mark. Question mark. Question mark.
I,
We'll find
yeah,
out.
I'm not too sure where I read this as well, but I read that Bing was trying to incorporate ChatGPT integration into their website so that it would pretty much act as a
Okay.
search engine through Bing itself. I'm not too sure where it is, but
Yeah.
then if that is true,
Oh, I think that might be where Microsoft is getting involved with
right, right.
ChatGPT. I think that's I had heard about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
so if that does become the case, would this mean that Google could finally see a proper contender?
I hope so. I hope so. I think it's time for some competition in search. I think we need more competition. While Google has innovated quite a bit, I think there are certain things that competition is always
Right.
healthy. I personally wish and hope that in the next 5, 10 years, there's three or four Google-like search engines that are competing for search listings. I just hope that happens because I get very frustrated by just having to just be reliant on Google so much in so many ways. And I think many people feel that way, but I don't know.
What would that kind of mean for SEO and digital marketing then? Would things change a bit or would it still be somewhat similar?
Well, it would go back to maybe 15 years ago, right? I remember I've been doing this for long enough that I remember using tools where we would run content through different, software packages, and it would give you a listing of these are the things you need to do for Google, these are the things you need to do for Yahoo, these are the things that you need to for Alta Vista, so so you're optimizing based on their search criteria. So
Probably going to go
I
back.
think it would go back. It would go back in some ways because I do remember those. There used to be a software package that I had downloaded. This is 2004 or 2005, and when I was doing optimizations, I was basically putting in the URL for my web page into there, and then it was giving me back feedback based on which search engine was, where it was ranking on these search engines and what changes I needed to make for them.
Yeah. I think the way things are moving are pretty quick, but I think because all of it's online and we're all connected online, we're just getting there a lot quicker because we're all just sharing information with each other. So hopefully we do advance, but not probably back to what we were before. Maybe just a more better version of that,
Yeah.
just in the future.
Yeah, I think a better version of that. I think it would have been cool if there was a Yahoo type competitor or something like that for Google. I think it would make things. I think there are certain things and limitations that they have as well that that a competitor could fill.
To maybe now move a bit to a more casual conversation, one thing that I wanted to quickly slide in before asking the other two questions is: have you seen this show called Silicon Valley?
I have not. I have heard of it, but I have not seen that
Okay.
show. Have you seen it?
It's one of my top shows for sure. The only reason why I'm bringing it up is
Oh,
because
okay.
I think in their initial run, they try to develop their own internet, a more kind of open, free internet. So I try
Okay.
to bring that in
Interesting.
here because I think there was someone else who was also mentioning that with the whole revelation of ChatGPT and it having AI implications in the internet, if someone did develop another open kind of internet that would allow for different AI to kind of develop their stuff, it might just be better for search and in general to help out users. But I mean, like it was related to the show, so I just thought maybe you would probably make that connection.
Yeah, I have not seen that show. Unfortunately, I have not had the time to watch it. But yeah, I'll check. I've been meaning to watch it for
One
many
day, one
years.
day. The other two questions
Yeah.
are something that you actually brought up a little earlier, and I'm just trying to dive into it a little bit more. You mentioned a book earlier. So, what are these? What would be your top three books that you would recommend listeners to try to read, in terms of both personal growth or work growth, or just um, pieces of novels that you would just recommend in general for people to read?
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, that's hard for me to rank because I don't remember all the books I've read. To be honest with you, but in the last year, the two books that I've really enjoyed and I highly recommend is one is Atomic
Okay.
Habits for personal growth, Atomic Habits, and the other one is Mindset,
Okay.
which is I'm listening to that book right now on audio, and it is phenomenal in terms of just growth mindset versus fixed mindset. So those two books are I would highly recommend
So,
those.
Mindset was by
I've been
who?
a mindset is by hold on, it should be on my phone. Just give me one
No
second
one's.
here. Um, it is by Dr. Carol Dweck, Dweck,
Okay. Because we probably mentioned this in.
The New Psychology of
All right.
Success.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. So Atomic Habits, I think you've heard
Yes.
of that
Yes.
book. Just provides some. I took it as a productivity tool. Atomic Habits and then Mindset are the two books that to me are just been very, very fantastic. In terms of like more personal, like
Leisure reading.
I can't really think of any other ones. I've read some great books over the years, that are just phenomenal. Another one that I would highly recommend for people that do a lot of maybe they have a lot of coworkers and they're in very tough, challenging situations with a lot of people is Crucial Conversations,
Okay.
which talks about how to resolve conflict. Um, and I would highly recommend that one as well.
Okay.
Those are, I would put that in my top 10 or 15 all time books.
Okay. Because we are gonna make like a little list of it to showcase listeners and viewers. The second part of that would be your top three podcasts that you would recommend people.
Oh, okay. Well, the top one would be my own podcast, right? Corner Your Market podcast.com.
And
So would recommend that. But joking aside, There's a couple of podcasts. Let me look at my library. I already
I
referenced
mean, we kind of know that
I don't
SEO
listen
on
to.
is the other number one, but it's okay. You don't have to mention that.
Yeah, yeah, SEO on air podcast. So there's already
Yeah,
two
yeah.
right there, right? So so there's
Right.
already two. But for just general knowledge building, because I believe in just expanding your knowledge base as much as possible, so you're aware of what is going on in the world and what is out there. I listen to Stuff You Should
Okay.
Know, which is a really good podcast. And then another one that I have started to listen to recently, that I really enjoy, is Modern Wisdom
All right.
by Chris. What's his name? I don't see his name here. Chris Williamson. Chris Williamson. Those are two podcasts that I really enjoy. And then for entertainment purposes, I listen to Case
Right.
File, which is murder mysteries.
Okay. I mean,
So
we've had. I
those are
think
fun.
someone else also mentioned how they like a bit of horror in their podcast, a bit of crime as well. So like, no judgment here. Do you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
But for crime podcasts, I'm kind of curious because I've always had like an inkling to want to try it, but not know when to try it. Because I usually listen to my podcast at night, and I don't know if listening to crime at night is the best idea for me, at least.
I usually listen to it when I go to the
Right.
gym. That way it keeps you on your toes. Like, oh, maybe somebody.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Um, yeah. So
So
stuff you should know and modern wisdom is what you said, right? For the top two, and then
yeah, those are the two.
the crime. What was the
Yeah,
crime one again? Um,
crime one was called
Case
Case
file.
File.
Right. Right.
It's an Australian podcast, and the podcaster remains anonymous. We don't know his name.
Okay.
I think that's part of the
Yeah.
brand
Yeah.
for him, but listen to, actually, you might want to listen to, it's not always like deadly
Okay.
crime. Listen to the Silk Road podcast. No, the name of the episode is
Okay.
Silk Road, uh, done by Case File, and it talks about the dark web.
Right. Oh. Hmm.
So you might find it interesting. It's a 5-part series, but it is
How long
very,
do
very
these episodes
riveting.
run for?
50 minutes,
Oh,
45, 50
so then I'll
minutes.
probably be done with it maybe tomorrow itself, I guess.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
One more thing that I wanted to just mention was your podcast that you put up. Is it available on Spotify, Apple, or someone that we can also maybe add a link somewhere?
Yeah, it's available everywhere. I syndicate it. So if you go to Apple Podcast, you can search, Corner Your Market, and it should show up. Same thing with
Okay.
Spotify. But the URL is corneryourmarketpodcast.com. So you can go there and you can see all the episodes and then how you want to
Right,
subscribe.
cool. No worries. It was a great talk, though. I was really enjoyed it. I don't think I've laughed also this much during a podcast, by the way. So,
Oh,
so
really?
there's a chance for that stand-up comedy role for sure.
All right. Thank you, Aaron. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Make sure you like and subscribe for more updates in the SEO world.